We're back.
We're back, and guess what? Today is episode 20.
20, we did it.
That means we did it.
What was the stats you told me? What, less than 1%? Or we're in the top 1% now or something?
Top 1% of podcasters. So
Wow.
99% of podcasters never get to episode 20, and we made it.
We did it. We did
Pretty
it.
sick. No, with only 1 week we skipped, and that was just because it was so busy and it was just like impossible, and the quality would have been poor if we did it
Yeah, I
at
think that's pretty good.
conference. I think it's good.
Yeah. Because there's something doing something consistently is actually surprisingly hard, I mean,
It
because so
is.
much stuff happens and stuff, and you always, I feel like I really struggle with that. Like I have the initial phase, I'm excited about something, a project, and
Right.
and then you hit the hurdle where it gets a little more gnarly, and then other stuff comes up, and then you
Mhm.
kind of leave it. And I feel like the difference between someone who does amazing stuff versus not is like they push through that plateau and they
For
just
sure.
keep grinding.
For sure.
So
I completely agree. It's always really interesting, especially where we live, in San Francisco and the Twitterverse. It's like it's a ADHD overload, It's just like somebody's doing this, somebody's doing that. Like there's a $61 million like seed round, a $20 million pre-seed. They're doing this and this and this, and everybody feels like so spread out. And it's just like, this is awesome. It's super fast, but it's very spiky. And I think that like building a successful business over the long term in any domain, it's comes with week after week, consistent grind, focus on like one thing, and just like go really, really deep in one thing,
Right.
which can get distracting when you're like in a world where everybody's working on all these cool things all the time. Like, oh man, I want to go do this and I want to go do that. And so,
yeah, maybe in the future once AI speeds everything up, we can have our cake and eat it too. Just get through a project
Totally.
and then move on to something
Totally.
else.
I
Just
completely agree.
streamline.
But well, for everybody that's listening today, this is Creative Flux. I'm Pierson, and this is Bilal.
I'm Bilal. Nice to meet you.
And
guys.
we talk about generative media, video, audio, and all of the above. Anything that does with media and AI in general. Sometimes we get to stocks, and that's unlikely, but today.
Well, it's been a brutal market last week. I feel like people are like right now, is the bubble popped? Is everything over? I don't know. I feel like we got some legs. We'll see.
Totally. Well, I think so. I think it would be cool. So there's a few things that we wanted to cover. Episode 20 is pretty big. Last week we ended on LTX. So LTX, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a video model by who's the do you know the foundation model provider?
It's a good question.
I
can't think of them off the top of my head, but they are really cool because they are like putting out these open source models that are just not getting in as much hype as ByteDance or Sora or all these other people. And they started, I remember we covered them initially with LTX, their first model, and it was what was it? They had the first, like, I think basically 1 cent or 2 to 4 cent 5-second video, which was insane. Like I think VO3 at the time was like 75 cents. So insane, right? And I mean, obviously the quality wasn't as good, but you could get something super fast, almost at the speed of an image. And I remember we talked through this workflow I had where I literally would generate these images. And then once I like the image, I would generate the LTX video just as fast. And then if I like the LTX video, then I would go to Sora or VO3. So it's almost like this cheap way of making sure I like a scene. But now they've released version 2 of their model. It's called LTX V2, and it's insane. It's now up to 20-second output duration, which is unheard of. I mean, I think the max I've seen is 10 seconds for, maybe 8 seconds for VO 3.1, 10 seconds for Sora. So 20 seconds is insane, which I think it might be the GB200s or something, could be some architecture. Well, actually thinking they're Chinese labs, so actually they wouldn't have access to that. So it's kind of crazy they did that.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
And it's also cool. Native audio, which is only VO 3.1 and Sora. So you can actually have native audio in there, and it sounds pretty good.
Totally. Yeah. So this was announced.
It's been super cool what you can make with that.
Right. No, it is super cool because this was announced on the 23rd of October, so like a week before Halloween. And we'll get into this because I think there were some things that were like generated for Halloween, like the Frankenstein video that we saw.
Oh, that was amazing. Yeah.
That one was cool. But yeah, so it's like LTX is one of those. I just looked it up. It's the company or the organization's called Lightrix. Makes sense.
Yeah,
LTX.
it's like tricks.
And they have audio, video together at 50 frames per second, generating 4K. So I mean, at native 4K resolution, 50 frames per second with synchronized audio. Pretty cool. It's cheap. And is it on FAL? Do you know?
Sorry,
Is it
what
on
was it?
FAL? Do you know?
It is. Yep, yep. It's on file,
Okay.
and they have a. I think they have a multiple one. They have a pro version, which is six
Mhm.
cents per second for a 1080p. But the other thing, resolution 1080p, insane. I mean, usually people we go from 480p to 720, and 1080p is like really expensive.
Right.
Here they start at cents for the pro version,
Right.
and then go up all the way up to 4K 2160p, 24 cents per second, which is I mean basically
Right.
very reasonable. And then for the fast version is you divide that by basically take 25% off. So 4 cents a second for 1080p. But
Totally. That's
4K
cool.
video, 4K video, 16 cents per second. So, basically under $1, you can get a 5-second 4K video. That's insane.
Totally.
I think this lab needs more love. People just don't know about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like we've had this discussion before. Like, what dimension do we differentiate? Do these labs differentiate themselves on? One, it could be price. One could be quality. One could be style. I think the style differentiation is going to be the key because I think you'll see price go down to zero. Slowly you'll see longer and longer generations for cheaper, and all models will have to compete on price. And then all models will also get really good. So you can safely assume, I think, not safely, but like you could assume that the models get really cheap and really good. And so
Mhm.
what is the differentiator between a model? It's like the native understanding of user intent. And you come to a model because you go to, let's say, Midjourney's model, because
Right.
all of Midjourney's models have that sort of
I,
cinematic, realistic aesthetic. And I think it's going to be the same thing with video models where you're going to go to LTX for a certain type of style, Sora for a certain type of style. And you don't have to be
right.
explicit in your prompting because you just know that model is going to fill in those gaps. Dependent. And I think that's like where you're going to see differentiation because quality and prices are going to just be commoditized, I
I
think.
agree 100%. I mean, Midjourney is a great example. Like it's been, I mean, they charge premium fee, but
Hmm.
people pay for it because the
Right.
aesthetic of it. And it's funny because I've resisted Midjourney for the longest time, and I'm like actually really close to subscribing because
Really.
I feel like the images you get are just insane. And if anyone who's played around with the UI, they make it much easier for you to discover styles as well. Because
Hmm.
it's one thing a model can do stuff, but you kind of have to have an idea of what's possible. And with Midjourney, you have these I think it's called
SREF.
SREFs,
Yeah.
SREF style references, where they literally have these amazing palettes, and you can just sort through them. You can find the thing you're looking for, and then generate
Totally.
a consistent story from that. And so it's not a coincidence that if you look at all these, we're talking about the Frankenstein video or all these, pretty sure all the images were generated by
Right.
Midjourney. And I know Midjourney has a
Totally.
video model that's pretty decent as well, at least for animation. But
Right.
I think most people, what they do is they generate the images in Midjourney and then go to VO3 or Sora. And that's the combo that's been working really
Right.
well.
Well, I mean, and also this is like a good segue, I think, into this like concept of like workflows because we've talked about this in the past. Like the common workflow is you go and you generate an image. You use that image as the first frame. You may generate also the last frame image. So you have
Right.
like the first frame, the last frame, and then you bring those into something like VO 3.1 or any video model that accepts a first and last frame. And you let the video model kind of fill in the gaps. Like, hey, this is the first frame, fill in the gap to get to the second frame. And it's a really
Mm,
powerful workflow, right? And so this concept of workflows, I mean, why I wanted to bring this up is because you're going to see model capabilities improve. And I think that model capabilities are going to get commoditized except for some few dimensions. But where the value, I think, is in these workflows, in like
definitely.
piecing together different capabilities from image models, from video models, from audio models, from also all these other things like non-AI sort of capabilities. Like everybody's so focused on AI. Obviously, this is an AI generative media talk, but something that happened last week was FAL released a auto captioning endpoint. And
Mm,
so they said, hey, if you want to make TikTok style captions on your video, call this endpoint with any video and we'll add the captions in the bottom. And so you're like, oh, that's super cool. How do they do that? Well, obviously they're not, and it's super cheap. It's like 3 cents per minute, I think, of audio. So it's
right.
really cheap.
Very
You add
cheap. Yeah.
captions to your video. How are they doing it? Well, they're obviously not taking your video and using Sora 3 or Sora or VO3 and putting captions
Right.
on that. They're taking your video, extracting the audio, going to transcribe that audio, and then
Right.
use some deterministic sort of presets
Right.
and captions and putting them
Probably
on.
FFmpeg. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think you're going to
Right.
see more of that where it's like, it's a hybrid between the AI capabilities and kind of stuff that we already are capable of doing today, but maybe we could do it better when you pair it with AI, like generating SVGs, made SVGs. Can you,
Mm,
for example, this is something we talked about in the past, like you could use an LLM to generate the code to write the SVG that has the animation. And so you don't actually have
mm,
to generate the video. You could just
right.
generate the code that represents the video and have motion
Right.
graphics. And so I think that you're going to see like more of these piecemeal pairings. And I think you'll see a marketplace or an app store type thing on Fowl, on these places where maybe you're not a model provider, but you're a workflow provider where you piece together these workflows, you build
Yeah.
them and you sell them as an endpoint hosted on Fowl
Right.
and these places.
No, 100%. I mean, the layering is just like it gives you that
Layering.
polish that, it distinguishes it so much. Like you can do stuff like add your own background music or, layer effects, sound effects and stuff, and just go to different models that will generate like a lightning thunderstrike.
Hmm.
I mean, rather than zero shotting that, you focus on getting the
Right.
scene right, then put it through another model, get the sound effect. I've also seen other like one use case that I thought was pretty cool was I'll often generate 480p video because
Hmm.
it's cheap and fast. And then rather I could just go for the 1080p and just pay more. But I've discovered I can just do the 480p, then go to a video upscaler, and there are endpoints for video upscaler, and then upscale that 4x. And it actually can
Mm.
sometimes come out cheaper and better. I mean,
Really?
so these kind of like, workflows, as you're saying, stitching together these different models, or even not even models, just algorithms, FFmpeg, endpoints, etc., are so powerful, and we're still
Totally.
figuring out what's the best combo of all these.
For sure. I think there's a lot of leverage right now to like just figure out what exists, like what has existed for the last 10 years. FFmpeg. FFmpeg's a
Yeah.
horrible library, honestly. Like, it's complicated, it's hard to run. You have to use like these weird terminal commands, to run it. And like we
Right.
face challenges together. But like just to
Yeah.
even know like what's possible with that and then thinking about how do you pair that with AI, it's a lot of, especially if you're a marketer or you're a creative, you're like, people aren't doing this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of room for opportunity. There's this other thing, like when I was doing our launch, we had our launch week last week, and over the course of the week, the thumbnails for YouTube, hopefully it got a little bit better. I was just playing around with it. It got faster for me to create. But the last
Uh,
one
no,
that
I'm
I
loving the
posted,
the thumbnails. I love the one with I don't know what there was something at the top and bottom like cool,
oh, I don't
like
know,
flag thing, kind of haze. It's kind of cool.
flag thing. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll
Not a
have to.
flag, but it was like a color. It was kind of a purplish, kind of a hazy color. It was looked pretty cool.
Sweet. Yeah, I was going for like this retro pixel deep sea sort of vibe.
Maybe that was a different one.
But yeah, like the one of the last videos that I created, I took a photo of me, like just literally because I was recording these tutorials, took a photo snapshot of like me in my recording, and then I went to Photoshop and I removed my background, but now that has like an AI removal. And then I just
Mm,
pop that on top of a nano banana generated image background. And then I had like text that was placed on the bottom through that Satori MCP. And so it was just like, was like such a easy workflow for me to envision this automating. Like, hey, you just have a snapshot. You take a snapshot of me right here. And then you're like, here's a YouTube thumbnail.
right.
And most of it's not AI. Most of it's just like generate a background,
Right.
remove my background, put me on top of this, and then put like some text on top. And don't generate
Hmm.
the text, like use actual like React components to put the text in the right spot, the right size, and don't
Right.
generate that, just like render it correctly.
Right. Yeah. No, there's so much alpha. I mean, I bet like the new Photoshop or Canva, like the UX is being built right now, and we're gonna look back a few years. I'm like, of course, that totally makes sense. It'd
Right.
be like one of those slam dunk obvious things. Like, yeah, that's obviously the best UX. But right now, we're still figuring out what it is.
Hmm.
Because I feel like we shouldn't be. It's still so much of a pain, like making these decisions, like putting in an endpoint, like me actually, okay, now I have to configure file, or oh, I have to go to
Hmm.
Photoshop just for this one removal thing, right? It should just be there
Totally.
for us, like, in the
Totally.
one UX. So we're
Totally. Totally.
a lot of alpha there for sure.
100%. And so one thing I wanted to touch on, just because we didn't get to last week, and we mentioned it earlier, was there was two pretty viral videos that happened last week. One before Halloween, the Frankenstein video. I wanted to
Right.
talk about that real quick
Yeah.
for anybody that hasn't listened. And then also this Nike video that came out too. I don't know if you saw
Oh
this
yeah.
one. The runner. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
it was remind me who was the character in that one?
It was the guy with the chainsaw mask. And
Oh yes. Oh shit. See, oh, kind of the Frankenstein video, which is basically Frankenstein, kind of like talking about how people are scared of him. He's just
right,
talking like he's doing therapy and he's lonely. The chainsaw video was awesome too because it's like basically the Texas Chainsaw Massacre
right,
movie montage. But it's like the first half is just him trying out. Working out and just wearing Nike sneakers. And you think it's just a regular pump, sports
right.
motivational video. And then
All
he
right.
starts running after this girl with the chainsaw. It's just the most amazing twist. But for me, what really stood out for both these videos was, and it's kind of a slap in the face from someone who I think, oh, I'm creative and stuff. We always had that excuse, oh, I can be Steven Spielberg if you give me $1 billion. I can make Jaws. Now you have no excuse. I mean, the
It's true.
storytelling is what separates
Hmm.
like these people, people like who make these videos and the ones who don't. And I look at this, I'm like, I want to come up with this. Yeah, it just pumps me
Hmm.
up, but also gets me a little jealous. I'm like, shit, I want to, create something like this. It
Right.
would be awesome, right?
Oh, 100%. No, totally. And it's really cool because also what you're going to see is that you can iterate more quick. So you can iterate more quickly with the tools, and you can also collaborate with people because I'm not in Hollywood, never been in Hollywood, so I can't speak, but I'm assuming that I think oftentimes tech is much further ahead than any other industry in terms of both the
Mm,
technology and also in the workflows. So like the way that we manage code repositories and we collaborate, how I can code, you can code on the same thing, and then we can both like merge our code together, right? In a lot of
right,
other industries, that still like doesn't happen. Like you share a document back and forth
right.
and you have to like it's crazy. And I think that you're going to start to see tech, those processes get built into movie making, filmmaking, script
Oh,
writing.
100%. I think I've always said it's what happens when content becomes as cheap as software. I feel like these paradigms like GitHub, merging, forking, they become I think much more easier and accessible. Like you said, like the right now, majority of this tech is accessible to tech nerds like, me and you. Like people who are like actually artists and stuff, or maybe not technical, but they understand story making and stuff. I feel like they're the ones who are actually going to be able to, once they get their hands on this and it's easy enough for them to use,
Hmm.
that's where we're going to see this amazing explosion of, oh, wow, that's sick. Like PJ and stuff,
Totally.
right? So,
Totally, totally. It'll be interesting. Like the collaboration side on things is going to be very cool. I can
yeah,
imagine like very much where
right.
like what
And
we were
there's
just saying.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, there is
Actually,
opportunity.
on that note, I don't know if you saw, someone just made a Billboard Top 100 song on Suno, and she got signed by a label. So the
Really?
first instance of a human being signed by a label based on AI music.
Oh,
I forget her name, but yeah,
let's look
I
this
think
up.
she was a musician she was making, but this is like she made basically AI generated music using Suno, and she got signed. So this is like I feel like there's this
Oh, right.
right now there's this amazing opportunity for you guys to like if you want to be signed by Nike, you make the Nike commercial or whatever, and get the deal. If you want to be the next Taylor Swift, start putting out the songs. Start
Totally,
building your image.
totally. Yeah. So this is a Suno created AI artist named Zanya Monet and signed a multi-million-dollar record deal with Hollywood Media. So Zanya Monet is the artist name, and the deal is estimated to be at $3 million. And the creator behind the AI artist is Talisha Jones. So she uses Suno for composition and vocals, but she writes lyrics herself because that's
Mhm.
fair. I think AI is
Yeah.
still not that great at
Right.
lyrics.
Yeah.
Even though if you listen to any like hop or pop song today, it's like the lyrics
Oh
suck.
yeah. It's so literal. I like going through and I'm like, make me a song about, like walking alone in a park. And the lyrics will be, I'm walking alone in a park. And I'm like, be a little more metaphorical, man. I mean, it's like, I don't literally want, I'm going for the vibes. And then the
Yeah,
lyrics will
yeah.
be, my vibe is walking alone in a park. I'm like, that's not what I meant.
And then it's gonna give you like Green Day's like Boulevard of Broken Dreams, like I walk a lonely road.
There you go.
It's
The
just gonna
only one.
copy it.
I love it.
So there's my 2 seconds of singing that's never gonna be heard
Yeah.
again.
But yeah, well, the other one on that, it's funny, you were saying that. The other one that's been popping off on social media is like they'll take like like a Jay-Z song and make like a jazz version of it, and it
Oh
actually
yeah,
sounds amazing. I don't know if you've seen these clips, and I mean, I feel like there could a lot of these old artists could have a resurgence where you can remix their songs. Maybe a Tupac, singing like like Frank Sinatra and stuff,
totally.
or what if Tupac and Elvis were in the same era. Like, what if they had done a You
Right.
can recreate these reality, like what if scenarios, and I think there will be a huge market for this, for
I
sure.
think I think it's super interesting. I think that there'll be like two dimensions of this. One, very similar to how Suno, you can use your likeness and you can show your likeness off to the world. You like Mark Cuban, you can just use Mark Cuban in your Suno videos, and he's given that
Right.
explicit approval that you could do. I think that's definitely going to
Yep.
happen. There's going to be a marketplace where you can, if you're an artist, mainly a vocalist, I would think, because your likeness is very much your voice and your face and your personality. But like you can, like if you're Chris Martin from Coldplay, and you want to give your voice out to the world to make Coldplay-esque songs with your voice, maybe you allow that to be like happen, and you get a royalty every time it's been used or has been played. Maybe this is what Spotify does. I know we've talked about Spotify. I'm very curious to
Yeah.
see how they enter the AI gen. I think because
Yeah.
they're going to enter into the
They
generation
have to. I
space.
mean, they have to margins. But I think
So,
it'll be very interesting because I think you're gonna see two camps. You're gonna see people, like the Cubans of the world, or even like the Grimes, who are more tech forward, and they say, "Hey, here's my voice,
mhm,
use it. As long as I get a look
right,
cut, why do I care?" And then there'll be people, artists. Actually, I think a huge number of artists, at least legacy
for
artists,
sure,
who are like, "No, it's my voice. It's art. Nobody else gets to sing like me.
totally.
I'm Madonna." And I get that point too because if you're Madonna, if there's a million Madonna songs, it kind of takes away the value of what is a Madonna song, right? So I get because art in a way is scarcity is always been part of art.
Mhm.
And so it'll be a very interesting to see because I imagine if you're a new artist, you have nothing to lose. You want to, you're trying to pay rent, whatever, right? But then if you're an established artist, why? I mean, you already have your millions.
Right.
And so I feel like the calculus will be if you're an old star, you probably will be a little resistant. And if
Totally.
you're new, you're like, no, I want to jump in. So
It's
it'll be interesting.
interesting. You ever know this company called Splice? Have you heard of them?
Oh, no.
So Splice they've been around for a while. They are they're the largest royalty-free sound company out there.
Hmm,
They work with like every big musician you just Splice. Like if you're an artist or you're a producer, you're on Splice day in, day out, you're finding songs. And it's a marketplace where producers, like ghost producers, essentially will create samples, like vocal samples, 15-second
mhm,
tracks, vocal or instrumental things, and they'll put it on Splice, and you essentially as a user, you pay a Splice subscription, like $20 a month, and you get access to
mhm.
these credits, and then you can download those songs and use them commercially
Oh,
in your music. And so if you listen to house music ever and you get into like the weeds of house music, you'll hear the same Splice sample in multiple songs. And it's very funny because
mm,
like they sound like the songs are completely different, but it's the same vocal track and it's either pitched up or down or like sometimes it's the exact same, but the
right.
song is completely different. And I could see that also being a case where if you're just a good vocalist or something, you
Yeah.
can kind of just let people like you just clone your voice, clone your singing, and lets people generate the lyrics with your voice, and it'd be
Yeah.
another source of income. So I wonder
No,
if
it
they're
is
looking to
very
do it.
interesting. It's funny because I remember there's actually, by the way, a really good. If you've seen, there's a YouTuber called Abrams. She
Cleo.
does amazing interviews about technology and stuff. She did this video about how the copyright on music works, and she actually took in the video she talks about. There's a Doja Cat song called Let the town paint the town red, paint the town red. I think it's a
Hmm.
pretty famous song, and she actually does. She's like, there's a sample in there which is "Walk On By," and "Walk On By" is like like an old
Right.
beat
Right. Right.
from
Right.
like
Right.
80s or whatever. And so she's like, okay, so they have to calculate, okay, it's like a 3 second vocal, there's a song, and then they do some math. There's a mathematical formula on how much the state of that artist will get
Mm,
because it uses that sample. So it's funny, and I guess with AI will just make this even more of a thing, right? It'll get super granular, I guess.
right.
So very cool.
That is interesting. Well, sweet. Yeah. So that's the music industry, except for a shaking.
Yeah.
So, well, we
But
talked about video, talked about music
yeah.
today. There was a few things. Did we want? There's two ways we could take this. We could either talk about stablecoins and Stripe, or we could talk about like these new image models that are coming out. Maybe image
Cool.
models, or what do you want to?
Well, we've been on Jerry Media. Let's do
Let's
stablecoins
say
for a
that.
bit. Like what?
Okay.
So you and I, we went to, it was a Stripe Builders event, which was this past Tuesday. Pretty cool.
Right.
Went to the Stripe office, super sick office, like one of the nicer offices I've seen. And they so Stripe has they've started to accept stablecoins as a
Hmm.
payment. But it's very interesting because I feel like it's still the Wild West. You're still figuring out stuff like, okay, if you have a wallet address and you instantly settle, how do you collect sales tax and stuff like that? And so I was asking the guy, like, okay, how do you do sales tax? And he's like, oh, it's my shipping address. I'm like, but what if it's online? Right. So I feel like there's still, as an industry, we have to figure out what it is, that that'll mean when you can just have an anonymous wallet address and you can buy something, because stuff like blocking a pair, an IP address, or your credit card, like that goes out the window. It's like a whole new paradigm, and which will
Hmm.
probably lead to issues, probably some issues. We'll figure those issues out. But one good thing about USDC settlement or crypto settlement is fraud isn't a thing, because you basically pay. It's like paying cash. I gave you $20, so there's no concept of fraud. Now I can't dispute that, and it's interesting because in Stripe, when you can kind of dispute that, because you get a payout. It takes a couple of days to get the payout. So Stripe technically does hold the funds, even though you've
Hmm.
settled it. So they may kind of act like an escrow there, but for the most part, I think stablecoin payments are supposed to be irreversible. I mean, that's like the
Right.
whole paradigm. So we might have a bifurcation where anything less than a certain amount, people don't care, but then over that, they do care, and they want old school,
Right.
escrow.
So let's take a step back real quick. So there's two questions I want to get into. One, why stablecoins? Right? Why is Stripe caring about stablecoins? If they're doing the money that they're doing today and the infrastructure, what's their
Yeah.
incentive? Two, it's also like, why are stablecoins the hype? Like, yeah. So, right, like, what are stablecoins? So I think the first thing that people,
Oh
if
yeah.
if you're listening to this, I mean, I think most people probably know what stablecoins are. It's a dollar or a physical currency pegged coin that is pegged to like an actual um, currency. So the
Yeah.
USDC is a stable coin. There's like Stripe has their own stable coins, like Bridge. Is Bridge a stable coin, or is that the
They
network?
do have their own stablecoin. I think you're right. I know they acquired the company for that. So,
Right.
but I
Yeah.
don't know who uses it right now. The
And
biggest one
so
is USDC, which is Coinbase kind of
correct.
manages that. And the biggest is actually Tether, which is USDT.
Hmm.
And that's a very interesting company with a very
Totally.
interesting history that's gone over.
Right.
But most people can't trust it. It's too big to fail kind of at this point, even though they were kind of sketchy
I
at the
mean,
beginning.
when people say that about cryptocurrency, I was like, it's not too big to fail. It can absolutely fail. Like, look at the banking
Right.
system. Now, when we talk about banking systems, we have trillions of dollars and movement and like that. Like, maybe that's too big to fail. But when you talk about cryptocurrency, and the cryptocurrency industry is like still super, super small. Like, you could wipe out 600 million or $600 billion. Like, I think the whole crypto industry is like around, it's less than a trillion today. And so like
Hmm.
you could wipe that out. Like, yes, will that suck? It's a lot of money. It could, but like for just Tether to go under, hopefully it never happens. But the reason why
Yeah.
stablecoins are all the hype now is because of the Genius Act that passed in Congress this year.
Hmm.
And the Genius Act essentially were regulatory clarity around stablecoins, not cryptocurrencies, not all cryptocurrencies, but stablecoins specifically, requiring issuers of stablecoins to have and prove that they actually have dollar-backed funds. So that if you issue $1 of USDC, you have to prove that you have a dollar of treasuries like bonds
Right.
or like cash on hand, and you had to prove that. And that was kind of the way it's like, how are you just making up all this money that's just pegged to the dollar? And that's why like Tether, I think originally was like really like, hey, like how can you guarantee like if there's a run in the bank, a bank run, kind of like,
Yeah.
where's this money coming from if everybody wanted to withdraw it, and how's it pegged?
Yeah, I mean, USDC is much more, I mean, I think transparent. Tether's thing was, I think they did fractional reserve. So it wasn't one-to-one backed for a while.
Right.
And then it got lucky because there was no crash or no one had a run on them. And by the time people started asking questions, they had made so much money that they were one-to-one backed. So I
Right.
think they're fine now. They're pretty solid now,
Totally.
but still, the transparency is not there, which is why I prefer USDC. But what
Right.
I think for me, the biggest thing about stablecoins is it basically lets the world dollarize. Like, it's so hard. Everyone wants dollars.
Right.
I'm from Pakistan. Everyone wants dollars there. For all the, we talk about Jerome Powell printing trillions of dollars, the Fed printing trillions, and it's being unsustainable. The US dollar is still the most coveted asset currency in the world. And most people would love to have access to it, but they can't because there's only a limited number of channels you go through and you have to pay fees and stuff. What stablecoins allow is like for anyone to have USDC. I mean, anyone from Zimbabwe to, Cuba or whatever, they, Nicaragua, they can all have Argentina, they can all get USDC and basically have access to dollars. And I think that is what is the most powerful thing about stablecoins.
Right.
There's that access,
Right.
aspect. The other
Well,
aspect, obviously, is the payment one, which is settlement, which is cool. I think it's great. I can pay you a $1 million and the fee will be a cent.
totally.
So,
Right.
and that's the other thing. So, the middleman is cut out. It's fast. It's instant. It doesn't take 2 days as it does
Mhm.
with any, forget the name of the bank, iBank system, whatever.
Right.
Right.
Well, think about this. I mean, the interesting thing is like this is advantageous for most people, except for if you're like a competing currency. But for the United States, it was like it's very important for them to be aligned here, and I think that's why the Genius Act passed because
Yes.
one, you need so if you're if you're Coinbase, if you're Stripe, if you're an issuer of these stable coins pegged to the US dollar, most of the issuers are going to be American companies.
Mhm.
And so you have to follow American laws. So the American law says you have to have $1 for every dollar of cryptocurrency. So if Coinbase is like, hey, we're going to print or mint 1 billion USDC and allow you to buy these from us, they're going to have to go buy $1 million of treasuries. You're going to be supporting, the treasury markets, and then you're going to be offloading those to other countries. And so it's like, it's the easy way just to get our currencies into the hands of other countries. And it's pretty bad. Like, honestly, like, though, if you're another country, like the power of the purse and like, that's super, like when you lose the ability to print your money as a country, it's very like, that's one of the most powerful things you have is currency control as a
Yeah.
government. And I see that if this becomes very powerful, non-allies or like neutral parties that like are wary, like if the US becomes the international currency for consumers, because it's the reserve currency, but it's not like the transactional currency in other countries
Right.
oftentimes because it's hard to get. I mean, not everyone's going to accept it. You're like, oh, what do you do with these dollars? Kind of, because you can't really get
Mhm.
them. It takes away the power of a lot of smaller country governments.
It does. I mean, sometimes they prefer that because they've been so mismanaged, like, like Argentina or
Totally.
whatever. They would rather have that and not worry about some other government coming and just driving inflation to a trillion% or whatever and just wiping out the wealth of all their citizens.
Right.
So for them, a lot of small nations, they would rather have that.
Totally.
That's why I mean, they're
Totally.
part of the EU, right? The other thing I think is super powerful about stablecoins versus just having access to dollars is, I don't want to get too much into politics, but the administrations of the past couple of administrations have definitely weaponized the dollar. And
Hmm.
this is one of the reasons why, you see a lot of nations not buying a lot of treasuries because they don't want to be in a position where suddenly they're strangled because they own a lot of US denominated assets. With stablecoins, you don't get to weaponize it because, you can't really freeze those assets or anything like that. And so it kind of gives, I think, a second wind to the dollar. And I hope it does. I actually think there's a huge story that is still playing out about how stablecoins can become the thing that kind of props up our basic whole economy in some way because we can just keep printing. I mean, we're printing right now, and in a way, the proxy has been stocks. Everyone just buys US companies, really the top 20 tech companies and stuff, and we kind of keep printing, and there's this like whole story around it. With stablecoins, you can just have more one-to-one with that, where
Hmm.
we just print money and everyone just owns USD.
And it's a more efficient economy. I mean, like we said this last week, like until there's no efficiency in the world, like there's always going to be room for opportunity and growth. And so if you have the rails that are cheaper to do commerce, and that commerce is transacting in US denominated cryptocurrency, you're going to have smaller transactions. You're going to be able to generate your image for 1 cent, like one stable coin cent. But
Yes.
so that's good for everybody, good for the entire economy. Maybe not good for
Yeah.
Visa and MasterCard, but
Yeah.
who cares?
I mean, they're probably going to jump in. I think they are
Yeah,
doing some
totally.
process stuff. And same like to your question about why is Stripe interested? Because they
Yeah.
understand this is going to be a huge part of the future and they want in on that action. And so I think I forgot the stats the guy shared on at the talk, but it basically is like doubling or tripling like crazy, like in the volume and stuff. So it's very much early days and it's getting towards a very explosion part of the curve.
Right.
They
And
want to be well placed for that.
So the one question I had, before we like wrap, about Stripe and everything, is that like I get the Stripe sees this as the future, makes sense, but where does Stripe fit in? If you're transacting me to you, and I
Hmm.
have a stable coin and I want to give you my stable coin, where does
Yeah.
Stripe fit in that picture? Like, are they providing you the wallet? If you're the merchant, when you set up your SaaS platform to accept stable coins, like you can just use Stripe and then you say, hey, here's a wallet address, like allow people to pay.
Yeah.
Like, how does Stripe fit into the
I
picture of
I
payments?
personally think, as someone who's been in crypto for so many years, I
Right.
still find the idea of setting up a wallet a nightmare. There's different test nets, there's base tests, there's mainnet, there's all these like decisions which most users, let's be real, they're not gonna make. And
Right.
so I think you're probably gonna see the Stripes of the world, if there or other newer companies, they basically abstract this away. And so I can see me, rather than me using a wallet right now, it's you use a wallet and then you go to a Shopify merchant, which is the partner that they had, the biggest partner they had for
Hmm.
this crypto integration. You go there, you buy something, and then the stable coins go to their Stripe wallet. I can see that the wallet going away too. I just have a Stripe account, like a card or something. I go and I just like, I see that you support whatever coins, and like, like credit cards, MasterCard, whatever. And I just like go, and it goes from a Stripe to Stripe account. I think you're probably going to see more abstractions, because most people are not going to just download MetaMask wallets and,
Yeah.
put coins in there and say, I don't know. I'm skeptical.
I wonder really if it just becomes like, you don't even, like consumers don't even know. Like, do we move to a future where like when you pay on a Stripe
Yeah.
supported account, it's just like automatically being paid through stable coins, and like your card, your Bank of America or your Wells Fargo or whatever, like your balance is like probably just
I
sitting
mean,
in
we
stable
figured
coins instead.
this has already been figured. This is a solved problem within a closed ecosystem. It's called Cash App. It's called Venmo. I
Right.
Venmo you money, whatever. But the thing is, I can't take those Venmo. I mean, I can deposit it to bank because they're dollars. And I think
Right.
it should just be USDC or whatever. And you can take those, you can move them off, platform, etc. And
Mhm.
so, just have basically a nice app for it. People
Right.
understand the concept of having like a cash amount, like a Venmo type account or whatever, and they can send you money, etc.
Totally. That's super interesting. Well, like always, we start off in generative media, we get to crypto, and it's just
Yeah.
more of a tech talk.
Why not?
But
Why
like,
not?
it's always fun. It's always fun.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
well,
yeah. There's so many aspects to this. You gotta explore all of them.
I know. I love it. It's super fun. So, talked about a lot. And I think so next week we'll do episode 21. We got to episode 20. And yeah.
Yeah, this is
So,
great. 20 episodes in, top 1%, 1%, at least in episodes. Hopefully, other metrics too soon.
top 1% of haters. Just kidding. Not
There
yet.
you go.
Okay. Well, sweet. I'll see you next week.
Yep. Take care.